Jimi Ryan with the Get It Done podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today. Today we have Sarah Middleton, who is if I read your LinkedIn profile, Sarah, you are the President of Sales Development and Recruiting at Fairway and the CEO of Ignite. But I know you more as Kobe, as pretty much next to Steve Jacobson, the CEO of Fairway, as like the most talked about person here and most valued employee. Sarah, welcome to the Get It Done podcast.
Wow, thank you. It's an honor. It's an honor, Jimmy, to be here. So all of our employees are the most valued, and truth is, we're the least of those. We're here to help everybody. So thank you.
Well, you wear that like a badge, and I know how much you care about everybody that works at Fairway, and you care about so many people, and it just shows. It comes out of your pores. Are there any accolades that I missed? I mean, president of this, CEO of this. Is there any boxes that I didn't check?
It's so funny. It's probably, I'm going to probably get just super deep with you right out of the gate, Jimmy, because it's just about more of how we change people's lives, right? That God calls us to come here to make a difference for the people that we come across each and every day. And so my hopes is that as my life goes on, I'm 61 years old now, that people see me in their life as a difference maker and a life changer, that I'm able to help them so that they can live their best life and they can thrive, and that things, improve for them overall. That's the call. So when you ask me those questions about all the titles and, all that stuff, I've been in the business. This will be going into my 34th year. And I've had the privilege and the honor of doing, many, many things in the industry throughout the time I've been in the industry. And, I used to have all the trophies and the plaques and all that stuff. And it doesn't even resonate for me now. I know that's kind of strange to say it that way, but what does resonate is when somebody says, you really helped me today. And what we talked about made a huge difference for me in my life.
Sarah, you do that on a regular basis for me, just with your Facebook posts of encouragement, positivity, personal growth, always making yourself better. And I would argue the 4 things you just listed, you've been called to make a difference. You are a difference maker. Encourage people to live their best lives and thrive. That's you all day. I mean, I don't know if you ever turn that off. And I'm with you on the whole trophies things. Like, we all used to love that. Like, wasn't there a time when like you did love it and you just like?
Oh yeah, no, and I love, just so everybody knows, I think it's great. I think there's times in your life, you're going from survival to success, and then you move into significance, and hopefully everybody goes through that and gets to go to significance. And I think those, yes, I mean, I used to, have the the whole wall with all of that stuff over the years. But then there comes a point where you just, and I really learned this from Jake, our CEO. I've known him since 1989, and the mantra here has not changed. Since I've been here, going into my 8th year being at Fairway, and the mantra is that it's really about passing everything that we've learned, passing all of the lessons, good or bad, passing them on to everyone that's coming up, the next generation. He talks a lot about that. And so the light, his post today was, it's not about the light being on me, it's about the light being on others, but also that, we illuminate anyway through our hearts, our soul, to share that with others, so that they want to, they want to become that too in their journey.
I love that. That's just so beautiful. There's a lot I want to expand on like already. I love how you go just straight deep right away. Uh,
Sorry.
no,
Life is short. Life
it's
is
here.
really short.
It's actually great because what I want to ask a follow-up question on your opening is, you mentioned difference maker, and I can tell when you talk, like, this means something to you, and have people live their best life. Just the way you say it is strong. It's passionate. I can feel it. You want people to thrive. What about that is so important to you that I can feel it across the microphone, across the speaker?
Yeah, I love that question, Jimmy. For me, it's just, when you go through your own journey and you look back and you had different mentors or coaches. I've been very fortunate because I've had great people in my life. I've also had people who've been very damaging, and so every single day about being a life changer is really being extremely conscientious about the words that we use, the words that we speak into one another, the words that we speak to ourselves. We sometimes see failure, and my hopes is that when you see failure in yourself, like, I can see who you're becoming. And then, we see mistakes, and then I see where those mistakes are growth opportunities for you. So those words that I'm speaking into you hopefully help you to go, oh, now I see where I'm going. So I'm not stuck in that failure. I'm not stuck in that mistake. And the point is, if we all can be that for each other in this journey, it's being a difference maker.
I mean, it's huge. It's such a memorable and fulfilling thing. And I think you're getting at really like self-awareness to be able to pick that out. And I've actually had this talk with Brian Clute. We were talking about his interview. Coaching is almost therapy for the coach too. But a lot of times you can see the things because you've already failed at this. Like, you already,
right?
I've been all the way down that rabbit hole. Here's how it ends, and it's just so cool to see you live it, but then also help, you reach down and you bring people straight up. Is that what it all is about to you? Is that the fulfillment for you? Is just that touch and having that effect?
Well, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be authentic and completely transparent. I have a very, very deep faith, and I believe firmly in the gospel, and I believe that God's called us to live that out, and I believe that we are to spread the good news to people, being very respectful of whatever anyone believes, but ultimately that's that's the call on my life, is that it is to heal the brokenhearted, set the captives free. And I've had that journey myself with people who were willing to come into my world and be very, very, very truthful with me, and to go to the hard places. That's why when you said, oh, we're just going to go deep out of the gate, I probably should have warned you, Jimmy. I should have called you and just said, it's very difficult for me now in my life, because we've had we've had a ton of wins in the face of what the world sees as wins, my husband and I, but we've had a ton of tragedy. And so I struggle to have the surface level conversations. It's very difficult for me.
And that's actually what the Get It Done podcast is all about. It's that come up story. It's the failures that you've had to get through to get to the point that you're at. And look, you've mega numbers from, I mean, even in 1990, I just heard this. I was listening to you, and you were saying that you did like $100 million in 1990. Like, who else did that? I can't imagine anybody else did. And like, you have all these accomplishments, but what matters is I just love it. You're straight for it. No, listen, that doesn't even matter. What matters is my happiness, which matters is other people's happiness, and really just helping people see their dreams. So I want to go back to my original start, which wasn't as deep, but it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is about the come up story. And
yep.
I use Elon Musk as an example. He went from $1 million to $1 billion. And
Yep.
that story is beautiful, great, awesome. I'm more concerned with the 0 to $1 million. And because that's really where it's all built. And it's that come up story where I would argue every single thing happens because of that original moment in your life. And I want to go all the way back. So we're going to start with, so where were you born? Were you always from Denver, Colorado?
Yeah, born and raised. I'm a Denver girl, second generation. Very proud of that fact. You know, my father and mother both have passed away, but I was very lucky, very blessed to have the parents that I had. My dad was a World War II fighter pilot, and came back from the war, and went on the VA bill to Denver University, and had 2 double majors while he worked full time. He was a worker. And my mom was such a pioneer for her time. She was the first female licensed stockbroker in the state of Colorado. And she was also the first female builder in the state of Colorado. So I grew up in a family that was very, very much work ethic. They were both Depression babies, and that was their mindset. But the unique thing especially about my mother, she wasn't, the leave it to Beaver type situation at home. I mean, it was a wonder that, we ended up getting fed because they worked so much. So you were just sort of kind of figuring it out. And trust me, we were always fed, everything was taken care of, but they worked. And that's what we were focused on as a family. And they were hard workers. But my mom was extremely positive. So I had something that I was given as a gift by both of my parents about seeing the glass half full from the time I was a little girl. And, I grew up with her reading books like Kahlil Gibran, Zig Ziglar, Og Mandino, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. I mean, stuff that nobody was exposed to. And I was exposed to that. And I, of course, had no idea that any of that was special until, later on I got into my 20s. And then all of that really started kind of coming around for me, especially my late 20s with Tony Robbins, and then really going, oh man, this was just how we talked. This is how my mother spoke to me, and the expectations around how we thought, as a man thinketh, so he is. And so that, Jimmy, was very, very unusual that I was exposed to that kind of thinking.
I mean, maybe you didn't think it at the time, but I mean, to have a World War II fighter pilot dad, that's so cool. That's so cool. And look, if he grew up in the Depression and fought in World War II and he's a fighter pilot, I have to imagine there's nothing slipping, in your house. Like it.
Well, and you have to remember, to that generation, the World War II veterans, they never talked about it. And it wasn't until later, really the last couple of years of his life, that he really shared the depth of that experience, the horror of that experience, because he was on the Pacific side with the bombings, and he flew B-24s. If you read the book Unbroken, that was the plane that my dad flew. So, hearing truly, he never talked about it. I never really understood that about my father either until, I got into my 20s. So I had the foundation, I guess, Jimmy, is what I want to tell you. I was given this incredible gift of positivity, and you can do anything. Now, there's a flip side to that too, where there's just this high level of expectation. And one of my funniest stories, I'll share this with you, this will crack you up. When I was 5 years old and I was sitting on my grandmother's lap, I was super close to my grandparents on my mom's side. And my mom said to me, "You will be the first female president." You need to understand that. Now, that was said to me throughout my childhood. Well, you can imagine having an expectation and getting a B, or not, going to a, I went to Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. And I remember telling my mother, I've completely blown for a number of reasons, for many reasons, many failures. But, I was like, I am so sorry I let you down. We knew my chance at, running for office was gone by the time I was 19. But anyway, there's a flip side to that too.
Well, did she say like President of the United States? Because
Yes.
you could wear it. Okay, all right. She was specific.
Yes. Yes. And I love my mom. I love my mom, and I'll see her in heaven someday. But when I see her, I'm going to go, man, that was a heavy lay on for a 5-year-old.
Geez. Yeah, you could have been a little bit easier on me. But I have to imagine, though, I mean, she's a pioneer of herself. First female stockbroker and
Yep.
first female builder. And I have to imagine she's probably the only one. I mean, at a certain point, and I mean, if you're the first, you got to be the only one for a little while.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
she was definitely a pioneer, and she had some really cool mentors, happenstance, that came into her life that she ended up partnering with in building a lot of the subdivisions that still are here in Denver. And it's just really, really cool to kind of see that legacy. But nothing was ever just given as a kid. We all worked. I had a job, and I was working, really. I mean, I was helping my dad ran a large construction paint store, and I would go down on Saturdays as a little tiny tyke and sweep the floors, and get a quarter for doing that all day on a Saturday. And then started working when I was 14, waitressing, and really never looked back. Always had a job.
let's talk about that. What was so your first waitressing job was when you were 14, but you were helping out your dad in a construction.
Well, it was a giant kind of construction-driven paint store. He ran that store. He actually had the same job till he was 77 years old. So
Wow.
he was, yeah, right. So also had that stability of showing up. I don't ever remember my dad being sick and missing a day of work. I don't remember it. I'm sure he probably had a day, but that brought a lot of consistency into our home with both he and my mom.
Boy, it seems like, I mean, truly, it seems like your parents had a huge role on your direction and trajectory of your life, starting from when you're born and on. When you got your first job, waitressing job, what was it? Where was it? Is it?
Yeah, for anybody from Colorado that's older, my first waitressing job was at the Soda Straw on Colfax, and people who know the area will know what I'm talking about. And I waitressed Saturday nights and Sundays, and then I got to do it one night a week. And I rode my bike, and had that job when I was a kid. And then it was one job after another as a kid, just making money. And I ended up loaning money to kids in the neighborhood and charging them interest. And my mom taught me how to do that, and just started figuring out the value of money and what money meant, and being able to buy my own things and kind of make my way. And my parents wanted to make sure that was a part of my upbringing.
That's incredible. I wish I would have done something in bar industry when I was a kid. I mean, but I mean, that's tough learning. I mean, right away, but then also learning, like loaning people money in your neighborhood. Can you imagine somebody saying that today? I mean, just like, I mean, did anybody stiff you? I'm sure that had to happen. Like people just didn't pay.
I have stories. I have stories. We had our 40-year reunion a few years ago, and I was trying to collect at the 40-year reunion.
That is so funny. Hey, you owe me $5. Like,
no, it's a lot more now because compound interest. But oh well. That's kind of fun.
That's awesome. So high school seems like I'm just going to call it out. Were you a straight A student? Like
Look, here's the thing, I do put my parents on a pedestal and I'm very thankful for them, but I made a lot of mistakes, in high school. I had good grades. I had, if I had a couple B's and all that kind of stuff, but, I'm not going to tell you that it wasn't stressful. The expectations, the overachieving was tough on me in high school. And it was really, really tough on me, especially going into college. And you always kind of have to take your own path, right? And then you come back to it. And I ended up going to Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado, and doing some really kind of unusual things because I was in my own way rebelling against what my parents were meaning. And this is another funny story. I lived in a yurt in college. I was
What's a yurt?
It's like a teepee structure. It's a Mongolian structure, and I, built it. I dropped out of college for a semester, and I went to a yurt compound in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I lived there for a few months and built a yurt, and I brought it back to Durango, and I ice climbed, I telemark skied, I did all these kind of mountainy, kind of crazy things. I waitressed, I just kind of got away from everything that my mom and dad were. And fortunately, they were good about it because you do go through that stuff, and they came up to visit and had to trek up to this yurt, and they were horrified that I lived in this thing. And, but you know what? It's just what you do, right? It's what you do. So.
Right. And it doesn't even surprise me. Everything's so prim and proper, scheduled. I'm sure that everything's just so perfect in the household in a lot of ways. Of course, you're going to expand out on that. But it seems like you chased every adventure possible, it was just like, if there's an adventure, okay, I'm going to go take it. Let's just go build a yurt.
No, I did. I hung out with a group of guys that were the first, the gentleman, his name is Forrest, he created the first mountain bike, and that was end of 1978. And so I learned how to mountain bike with these guys, and they took my mom's old Schwinn, kind of the big, and they turned it into a mountain bike. And, it just telemarking. I was the first female to telemark on the mountain of Purgatory, to learn that. And yes, I was doing all these really fun athletic things. And I played a lot of sports growing up, Jimmy. That's the other thing. Just because I grew up in a neighborhood with a bunch of boys, so I got to play a lot of sports with these boys that are still my friends, that brought me into their circle. And I played softball, through grade school and high school. And then I also played softball in college. So sports was a big thing for me growing up.
So a lot of times people have, and I think that you're touching on it, and maybe there's a story, if you remember it, there's a story there. So
right.
A lot of times people go through a very challenging time and they're pointing in one direction and they all of a sudden turn another way. It seems as though like you were pointing in the wrong direction when you're going on these adventures and doing this and having your fun, and maybe not all bad, but it seems you're pointing in another direction. At what point was that over, or was there a defining moment where you went a different way?
Yeah, no, big failures. And again, I had, this is so funny because I'm, whether we block this out in this tape or not, but I had been married. I got married in college to a real kind of mountaineer guy, and divorced quickly because he was always off on, climbing K2, this, that, and the other. Then I got married again, and that was a failure. And then I got married again. Here was the turning point. My mom and I had this discussion, and she basically said to me at the age of, I was 27 when it was all starting to come to a head with the, varsity failure at the top of my forehead. And she said, you were on a faster pace than Liz Taylor. By the time this thing statistically averages out, you will be married this many times. I was like, oh my gosh. And that was a turning point for me. Right. And I realized, look, I'm making a lot of mistakes. My chooser's broken. I was doing pretty well. I was selling timeshare at that point for the Marriott Corporation, and I did really well with that. But I realized, you know what? I'm really good at sales. I'm really good at it, and I really liked it. And my mom had said to me, and so did my dad, is you'll never have a glass ceiling. You can earn as much as you want. Because at that point, my mom, the building company, had started a real estate division. She started that up, and she had about 400 agents at that point under her. It was Witkin Real Estate.
Wow.
So yeah, so she wanted me to get into real estate, and how the mortgage business goes. Happenstance, I was selling timeshare, ended up talking to a dear friend of mine who's the top realtor in Denver, and he said, "Why don't you become a lender?" And he said, "You can, hunt as much as you want. You love numbers. You're clearly loaning money to other kids when you're 5 years old. You may as well, take this and take it on." And that's what I did. I started into becoming a mortgage banker, and started in 1989.
So with nobody, when they're 5 or 6 or 14 or whatever, nobody says, "I want to be a loan officer." And
No.
it's always a favorite question for me to ask, how did you fall into this? And there's always a story. And it was literally just happenstance that your buddy's telling you, "Hey, you should probably do this."
Yeah, it was. I was actually, sitting on site. I'd come back to Colorado after selling timeshare for the Marriott. They brought me to Colorado to open up a division in Breckenridge, and then they put that on hold. And then at that point, I went to work for one of my mom's builder buddies, and it was during the Persian Gulf War, and interest rates were at 18%. And you can imagine, I mean, there was just the oil industry in Denver had collapsed. And literally, I remember, driving and seeing a real estate sign pretty much in every third yard. It was really a sad time in our state.
Wow.
And so I'm sitting on site. I was doing okay, but you're trapped in a garage when you sit on site. You're trapped in a garage. And my buddy Gary Miles, he's still one of my one of my best guy friends. He came by to see me, and they were always kind of looking for deals so they could get the listing on the sale side of the resale. And I said, "I'm going to die in this garage. Like literally, I'm going to die in this garage." And he's like, "You should be a lender. You would be so good at it."
That's
and
that's
he got
awesome.
me, yeah, he got me the interview at Waterfield Financial. I interviewed at another company, Universal Lending. And I went to work for Waterfield, and there you go.
And that's how you started. So Gary Miles, is Gary still around?
Gary's my neighbor. I'm looking out my window, and Gary lives about 5 doors up.
That's incredible. I mean, what a good friend. How'd you meet Gary? Like Gary's like, I mean, what a great hookup.
Yeah, well, if you sit on site, that realtors come by to try to snag up the listing side of the resale. And Gary had known my mother for many, many years. And so Gary and I became fast friends. He's just the greatest guy. And he's been a great mentor. He's been a great truth speaker into my life since I was 27 years old. So, and he's my
Well,
neighbor.
that's beautiful. And I mean, so shout out to Gary. So look, you were divorced 3 times by the time you're 27.
Well, I took a break after that. I took a break. So there's some good news in all of that. So I know.
Okay. What I'd like to dig into just a little bit, if it's not too sensitive a topic, obviously.
Yeah, let's not, Jimmy. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
This is what to build off what you said just in the beginning of this, is that, listen, I want to be a difference maker. Okay. I want to help people. I'm looking at my notes. I want to help people thrive and live their best life. There's a lot of people, Sarah, that are going through divorce, especially after COVID, all the nuts stuff that's going on. There's a lot of people that are pointed in the wrong direction. And it really helps people to hear about another person in that similar type of situation where it's just hopeless and it's so
Yeah.
easy to give up. And it's just, was there ever a time in that where just like, what skills did you learn at that point? Because it's just, you've got to have learned so many
No,
things.
that's a great question. I will tell you that, again, I didn't, my parents were never people who, where I could fall back on them for money. They didn't feel like that was going to be a helpful thing because, again, they were depression babies. You made your way, you earned your own way through it. And the turning point for me was really after the third marriage. And, I had $397 in my bank account, and I'll never forget it. And there was no help at all from my parents, and my mom and my dad just said, you have to figure this out. You have to figure this out. And I knew, you know what, I think you just finally go, I am at the end of me and I have to look at me. This isn't about the men I've chosen. This is about me and my chooser being broken, that mentally I need to start looking into myself and understanding why I'm making these choices. And so, I was fortunate because, again, I was sitting on site at that point, and I started making a little bit of money selling houses. And then when I became a lender, I worked so hard. My first year in the business, I did 29 million, unheard of.
Wow.
Loan amounts the loan amounts back then were 66,000. And I started also into therapy with a woman by the name of Marty that again, happenstance. There's these people that come into your life and you don't know why or how, but that it's this magic moment, right? And I started seeing her, still friends with her. She's amazing. And she started, just helping me to understand why I was making the choices I was making. I didn't date much for the next, or truthfully, 8 years because my loan origination business was taken off. And back then, we didn't have assistance. I had a processor I shared with someone the first 2 years, and I did 29 million my first year. My second year, I did 83 million. Then I set a goal to do 100 million, and I did that my third year. So, I was growing my business. I was starting, and we didn't make much. I mean, you've heard Steve Jacobson talk about it. We didn't make much on loans, and I really wanted to save up. And at that point, I was focused on becoming a better person, not trying to find another person to fix me. I was on a path to be happy within myself, and spent a lot of time working on that. So.
Well, I love this quote, Sarah. You're at the end of me. I really love that. That's such a fire quote. It's just something where it's just like, whoa. Because a lot of people have been there. But do you realize it? Are you self-aware enough to be like, it's me. I got to change. And you did. And shout out to Marty. You called it therapy. It sounds more like coaching to me.
Yeah, I mean, Marty was great. She was very, very honest with me. And, again, I had to figure out why I kept going around that. We create patterns, and I still do it. We still do it. Again, I'm very, very happy to tell you, I met Mark Middleton doing his loan 8 years later when I was 35, and we've been married ever since. And so, we're going on 26 years, and he's amazing. He's the love of my life. But I will tell you this, I was happy when I met Mark Middleton, and Mark Middleton was happy when he met me. And there's never been a moment where I've been wanting to change him or felt like he wanted to change me. It's been this I'm just so blessed, and I wish he may even walk in. I'll drag him over here so you can see him. But he's such an incredible human being, and he's an incredible rock for me. He's very much this just rock. And he's also a mentor and a coach and speaks. In fact, I mean, he was coaching me last night because I was a little bit down about COVID, and I was down about, I'm a people person. I love people. And this is wearing on me, not getting to see a lot of our Fairway people and love on them and hug on them. I get to see my kids, and I get to see him, and I get to see a couple dear friends that, you know, Gary, and people who live in my neighborhood. But I miss people. I miss crowds. I like crowds. I like being with people. It's like my favorite thing.
I can totally relate, and I know there's a lot of people that could to that. You need to come have a vacation to Fort Myers Beach. Come on out here.
I've heard that, but back to Mark, he was, you know, coaching me out of that a little bit, and just said, "This isn't forever. We've got maybe a little bit more of this, and we're there."
But you guys came to the relationship already happy. I think that really is the key. You weren't looking to fix each other, more so build each other up and grow. And I can't hear these numbers also and not dig into this, at least an ounce. Your first year of 29 million, second year of 83 million, and third year of $100 million. There are people that work at this and do it for a decade and don't ever touch even close to 100 million, not even at 29. What would you say was, I mean, work ethic, sure, but work ethic isn't all there. I mean, to do those types of numbers, everything has to line up. What would you credit it to? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a little bit of luck always in this stuff, right? And timing is everything. Like this year in the business for originators, you know, I would say if you didn't have your best year ever in 2020, you weren't working.
right.
Because it was just such an incredible year. But you have to remember back in '89, not that I don't even think you were born yet, Jimmy, but
I was. That's all right.
interest rates had started to drop. So that helped. And then there was a shift that started happening in the Denver economy. So in 90 and 91, some technology started coming into our city. Because we had gone oil bust, and then some technology had started to come in. Interest rates went from 17% down to 14%. I did not do refis. I was not allowed to do refis where I worked at Waterfield because my boss was a slime bag, sorry. But anyway, he kept them for his brother-in-law. So, but that was a good thing. That was, at the time, I was all kind of, but it was a really good thing because it made me understand immediately that I had to go hunt. So back then we didn't have coaching, and we didn't have, Todd Duncan hadn't emerged until Todd came out, and I went to my first Duncan, the first Duncan thing in 1992.
Sales mastery.
Yeah, sales. Well, it was the very first. I don't even remember what he called it back then, but
Probably just Todd Duncan.
Yeah, Todd Duncan. We didn't have any of that. But what I did realize, looking back, and it was no different than when I was, a kid and I was working, is consistency and putting at least somewhat of a plan in place. And so I'll never forget this, and Steve talks about it, is I made a goal that I had to call on 100 realtors a week, period. And no matter what, I had to hit those realtors. So I had a route. And then I also went to, I can't remember what it was. It was, I went to some positive thinking thing. And the guy that wrote, Robert Cialdoni spoke. He wrote Persuasion, and he's been around forever. And he talked about the law of reciprocity. And the law of reciprocity is that you have to understand human nature. And human nature is that I'll come see you, Jimmy. Let's say I'm calling on you as a realtor, and I bring you something. So I started taking out these goodie bags, no big deal. You already have a lender. You don't want to see me, but I'm going to leave you that goodie bag, or I'm going to leave you a market update, or I'm going to leave you something of value. And I'm going to do that over and over and over. And his theory is that you have to touch somebody 4 to 6 times, and then the scales will start, the weights on the scale will start to shift, because initially you don't want to have anything to do with me, but after a while I'm going to annoy you so much, and your subconscious is going to go, oh my gosh, here she comes again. And at some point, and I'm going to keep being super nice to you, and hey, I'm here as your B lender. I know you got your A lender, but if they're never around and you need somebody immediately on the weekend, I'm here for you. Well, at some point, you're going to give in. It's just human nature.
I mean, even if you're bad in even if you 5% of them work with you, you're calling 100 a week.
100 a week, 100 a week. And I had a route that I was able to, drive around. It would take me, I would do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, Saturday morning. And I did it consistently for 12 years. So let me state, go ahead.
Well, when you say call on a realtor, I'm thinking you're picking up the phone and you're calling them, but you're saying make it like it's more of the old school. I'm saying old school. It is. That is old school though. You're paying them a visit. That's a call.
I'm paying them a visit. I'm getting in my car. I'm packing those goodie bags on Sunday night.
What'd you bring? What was the goodie bag?
It's so stupid. Jake and Paul tease me about it. They know, but I put a Coke in, I put some candy. I had a laminated card, with my phone number. My cell phones had just come out, and the first 2 years I had to stop at payphones, and I had my pager thing going on. And I put that in there, and, and I did a market update once in a while in there to give them what was happening in the market. And I load up the car, and I had to do my route, and I had my different real estate offices that I systematically kind of laid out, and I'd make my rounds.
So how awkward was that? Was it awkward?
Here's the thing. I always think you can tell if a loan officer is going to be a great loan officer if you ask them if they like cold calling.
I agree.
Okay? I don't mind cold calling. I don't mind knocking on the door. I don't. And, throughout my childhood, different things I was selling, whatever, I had no problem knocking on somebody's door trying to sell them something. No problem. Timeshare, no problem. I like cold calling. I feel like every single person I meet, I have a possibility that I could do business with them, and they could become my friend, and they could become part of my life and part of the circle, and I could maybe help them somewhere along the way, so there's always an opportunity.
It turns out you're good at it, it turns out it works. Well, the numbers don't lie. I mean, it's just like, but 100 a week, you're putting in the work. I mean, you're putting in the work, especially because it's not a phone call either. There's some people that don't make 40 phone calls to realtors on a Monday, and it's a phone call, I mean, it's just, that's hustling. Take us from there. 91.
I did a lot of business for many, many years. And, the journey, if you want to keep growing in this business, like I said, there's no glass ceiling at all. Started a branch and started, growing the branch, and again, applied the same principles, started growing a region, applied the same principles for recruiting. I love recruiting. I love it. If I believe in the product, and I believe in the Fairway products, so wholeheartedly, 100%. And again, it's whatever you want to have happen in your journey. But, and it's weird for me, Jimmy, to go, oh, look at me, I did this. That's really odd for me to do it. I can tell you that there's so many of the listeners that are so much smarter than I am. But what I probably have that maybe a lot of people don't have is that consistency. So there's just this consistent process to what I do every single day, and I have done for 34 years. There's a consistency to it. And you see that with Steve Jacobson. There's a consistency. Speed of response was absolutely one of my core values from day one. I knew how important. I always, marketed myself as I'll call you back in 3 minutes or less. And you can imagine with payphones how much fun that was. You
I
can
couldn't imagine. Or pull
scramble.
over and you have to find one.
Had the tray of quarters trying to find the payphone, and some guy would be on the phone. I'd be like, "I'll give you money if you just get off the phone." Just let me on the phone.
Like, please, I got to close this deal.
Right.
So I want to be super respectful of your time. Honestly, Sarah, like I should have you back, but this has been just great to get to know you on a deeper level with this. I want to talk about Fairway Ignite because it's something that me personally, well, actually to go back to consistency for a minute, everybody struggles with that. I think you just thrive at it. It's something I struggle with personally, being consistent. I'm big on hitting a grand slam, once a month type of a thing, and a lot of people are that way, or hit a home run, but it's not about that. It's about base hits and every day. And that's something that I've changed, or I guess was on purpose about it. And that's helped me to really take off. And speaking of taking off and helping people take off, what is Fairway Ignite, and what do you do with Fairway Ignite, and why is this such an important piece of your life?
Yeah, it's all of us, but Steve was the one, our CEO, who really birthed the idea and then challenged myself and Kevin McGovern, Austin Lar, and initially Ray Eichhoff. And we didn't know. I mean, I had been coached. Kevin was a coach. I'd been coached for over 20 plus years, super passionate about coaching. And you ultimately just naturally end up coaching people, right? As time goes on and you're just so hungry to learn, and then you want to share what you're learning, and you end up, coaching people along the way. And, people have to call out your gifts too. And I think Steve Jacobson has so many gifts, but that's one of them. He can look at somebody and he can really call them into their destiny. And I would say for me, he called me into that destiny. And I believe I have that gift too. I can look at people, if I'm aware and I'm awake and I'm fully present and I'm really listening to them. I mean, you got to put that around it, right? For all of us, but I can call them into the giftings. And Jake did that for me. Jake called me into that gifting. And it was happenstance again, kismet, with Kevin McGovern coming to work for Fairway. And I didn't know Kevin, and Kevin and I connected. And then I knew Austin, and Austin I knew would have to be a part of it. And of course, Ray, and then, our tiny little band of misfit toys we started up. We didn't know. You have no idea when you start these things, right? But you also realize, again, you start creating a system, you start creating the disciplines and the consistency. And then John Tobias came into it, Carrie Guerrero, Nicole Ruth, and our leader coaches. And you never do it alone. And let's face it, I want to go back to my origination too, because I want to do a shout out real quick, if you don't mind, Jim.
Yeah, do it. Go.
Okay. I would have never did what I did without two women who were at Fairway, and they've been with me for 30 plus years. They do different jobs now at Fairway, and it's Kathy Previtt and Kanoy Ruberson. They were my support people, and they allowed me to make those 100 sales calls a week. And they allowed me they were the brains of the organization, that is for sure. And they helped me to be a better loan officer. We created our own conveyor belt system together, and there's no way I would have done any of what I did without them. And same with Ignite. These people come into your lives, and you don't get there without each other. So it's every step of the way at Fairway, it's all of us together doing this. So it's been so incredible.
Well, shout out to, it's Kathy and Kamoy.
Kanoy's Hawaiian. Yeah, she's awesome.
That's super
Kathy
cool.
is too.
Well, I can't imagine you not having, you probably needed 5 Kathys and 5 Kanoys calling 100 realtors, because I'm sure that they were all sending
Well,
you
no,
business.
they were my processor and loan officer assistant, but we didn't have teams back then. You have to remember that, Jimmy. We did all that volume, and again, you didn't have all of the different things today. I mean, putting a deal together, I do believe was a little bit easier. And I stopped originating in 2011 and had a couple more members to the team, but those 2 women, and I also had an amazing underwriter that was with us for 14 years, Betty Connor, and our closer. So,
I mean, it was a different time, but everybody's rules were the same. You know what I mean? So you can't look at it like it's something that's different. And you said something I really liked, called into gifting, called into a gift. That's fire. I love that. And that's something that is like, what a great gift to have. I a lot of times say it's like, speak it into existence. And like, you have an idea and I think this would be great for you, but it's so much more personal when it's called into gifting, because it's like, how can you help that person be a gift? Like, that's just deep. I love that. And you should quote that and put it on All Things Ignite. Like, this is what we do.
Well, look at what you're doing. So you have a gift for this, and now it's really just the challenge of the consistency of it, right? And continually, retooling and redoing, and it's hard because you get to those places in the road where it's difficult, and you don't necessarily see the results yet, and you have to be willing to keep going, and that's where people stop. They'll call on realtors, they'll make the 40 phone calls, they'll do that for, they might even do it for a month. But when I tell somebody, you may have to call on a realtor for 7 years, how do you feel about that before you get a deal?
Mm-hmm.
Or you might have to call on a recruit. In fact, the reason I was late, I was on with Linda Davidson's team. And I said, Linda, you were one of the longest recruiting cycles for me, because I knew her for 20 plus years before she came to Fairway. We were in Building Champions together, and she texted me finally one morning and said, can you talk? I'm like, really? Do you mean it?
Right.
But you can't give up, because you never know. You never know when that door's going to open, right? And then you have to be willing to walk through it when it does open, and not be afraid, or you will be afraid, but you just have to go. That's why we always say in Ignite, run to the roar, which is run into the face of fear, because it's always there. You may as well just understand it's going to be there.
At a certain point, you have to fail. You have to go for it, and you have to fail forward. And I mean, thank you, by the way, for your praise on me. I love that. I'll take that.
You are good at it. Now it's just going to be, can you keep going and keep.
I said right away, we're going to do 100 episodes. Like, I don't even want to look at my numbers until we do 100. And it's just like, but that's what you have to have. You have to have that type of a commitment. And I love that. So I want to be super respectful of your time. There are a few questions that I like to ask everybody. And I have to add an audible, because I'm sure that you have one just at the top of your head. Do you have a great Ignite coaching success story? Just anything.
Oh my gosh. We have, I could tell you story after story after
What's the best one?
Oh my gosh, okay. Well, of course I talk about her all the time. Nicole Ruth, and Nicole is just one of my favorite people on the planet, but
she's amazing.
Yeah. Nicole had a really hard upbringing. I mean, she's just such a positive person, and a single mom. She was raised a single mom family, food stamps. And, she is such a hard worker, driver. She's got just a really fun personality. But she's a get after it, and she dreams really big. I get the honor of coaching her. She's done all this herself, by the way, and her team. But she doesn't have limited beliefs. I mean, she might have them for a minute, and then we'll talk it through. And then she's like, "No, you're right. You're right." And I'm like, "That's something from way back. Let's put that somewhere else. That doesn't belong in your house anymore. Doesn't belong in this house anymore." So her story is phenomenal. When she started with Fairway 7 years ago, her first year in the business, she did 17 million. This year she's going to do 280 million. Most of it is purchase. And, there's no doubt in my mind she'll do 350 million next year. And she's built an incredible system, incredible team, and she knows who she is. She's to thine own self be true. That's what I love about her too, is she doesn't try this, she doesn't try that. She knows, and it took her a while to get there. It didn't start out this way, and that's how it is, right? You kind of bumble along, and then you go, oh, okay, this is comfortable for me. This is where I know I can be uncomfortable being comfortable in this push, this drive. And Nicole found that for herself.
I listen to almost all of anything that Nicole puts out. It's just, you're
Yeah.
going to get value out of it, because I know how much care she puts into everything. She writes everything herself. She talks to every client. And I mean, it's just, she's quite an inspiration. I always take value out of her. Thanks for that.
We have hundreds of stories.
I know.
Hundreds of them, but she's just one of many.
Nobody's going to listen to a 5-hour podcast. So we just gotta keep it going a little bit. So going on to my few questions. So first one is this: do you ever feel like you had a big break?
Oh, I feel like I get big breaks. That's a funny question. Jimmy, yes. Like, think about, meeting this person, meeting this person, meeting this person. Yes. I mean, I absolutely believe if you're open to big breaks happen. They do. We've had so many big breaks. Mark's done it, but we do a ton of stuff in the cold storage warehouse arena. And we had a ton of big breaks in that in 2000. And he's turned that into this crazy industry, but we knew nothing about cold storage warehouses. And we walked through a door that, looking back, we laugh about it and go, were we out of our minds? But we were uncomfortable. We faced the fear. We had an opportunity, and we went through it. And then we said, now we got to learn. And we were learning, right? Jimmy, you learn sometimes as you go along. If you expect it to be all figured out, you're never going to get those big breaks. I don't think. I think you have to sometimes just go, I'll learn as I go along.
And the big break is just a matter of fact. It's just like you put yourself in this position to get the big break.
Yeah. And I don't know that, consciously you're putting yourself in that position. Gary Miles said to me, you should be a lender. You would be great at it. You love math. I'm like, I do. And he's like, okay, let me introduce you. Okay, you go to this interview. Okay, I'll go.
I know, okay. Right?
I got a big break.
Right. It's so cool though, but you put yourself in the position too. And that's what a lot of times people think, that I'm going to, scratch a lottery ticket and win. And it's just not even about that at all. But still, there's still some work that goes into it too. It's better be lucky than good, is what they say. But
no, Steve said to me, let's start a coaching company. You would be great at this. Let's start a coaching arm. Okay, now I'm going to go in the bathroom and throw up. Okay, I'll be right back. But the point is, you have to say yes. You have to be willing to say yes to get the big breaks.
And now you guys coach over 1,000 people. Or is it 1,000?
We're right at 1,200 now.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely incredible.
It's everybody doing it. We're so blessed. So blessed.
Was there ever a time you felt like giving up?
Yes, many times. Yeah. I mean, there's been many, 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 many times, you just get tired, you get fatigued, you get down, you get, sucker punched. Hard stuff happens along the way. It always does. It's just, growth is not easy. Growth is really hard. And you have to be willing to just understand that there's going to be setbacks. There's going to be stuff that happens. And I mean, we're dealing with people. People are messy. If people weren't around, it would just be all fine, I guess. I mean, if somebody said that, I'm like, that's just part of it. You just have to expect that to happen. And then it's how you get up from that. How do you bounce back? And having those people that speak into you so you do get up. And I've been very fortunate to have those people. You know, I've shared it a number of times, Jimmy. We lost our eldest daughter. She died in, gosh, I mean, 2011. I didn't want to go on. I didn't. I just didn't. You're devastated. I don't even know. I don't wish it on anybody. And I was heartbroken to the depths of my being. But I will tell you that, you know, my faith, of course, Mark, the kids, everybody, and then my friends coming around me to pick me up and help me to start putting one foot in front of the other, and then understanding that, you know, life does go on, and that life is full of suffering, and life's gonna sucker punch you. You know, it is.
It, specifically in regards to that, do you remember something that brought you out of it? I could only imagine, being a father myself, just what pain that must be. Was there ever, like, I'm sure it was more of a process than like a one moment type of thing, but was there one thing that really stood out?
I've shared this a lot with everybody. And I'll share it again because I think it's really, really important for every aspect of loss in anybody's life. You know, when we were burying, you know, Katie, and it was her homegoing, this old pastor that I was introduced, another happenstance kind of situation. I didn't know him. And he said to me, I asked him, because he was 87 years old. And I said, you know, Pastor, you've buried a lot of people over the years, and what piece of advice would you give me? And he said, Sarah, I'm going to give you this piece of advice. He said, you must be so fiercely vigilant about everything and anything that you allow into your mind, what you listen to, what you read, who you surround yourself with. Every single thing you must filter through the filter of God, that it's creating the new pathways into your brain, and you're renewing your mind. Because if you don't, you won't heal. So
Powerful.
And I made a decision, and you know, at that point, I turned off all TV. I turned off, you know, any talk radio. I was very, very careful about what I read. I got really a PhD that year in, you know, reading books on grieving and healing and the journey. And then the people that were around and are around me, they're still my tribe. We're all about, you know, moving forward in the pathway forward, and being support, you know, a support system for me.
I mean, what a beautiful thing for that pastor to say. I mean, that's just I mean, you talk about ripple effects that you make in people's lives. I mean, that pastor was put right there at that particular time. That, I mean, he could have just passed by you too, you know, but he came out and said that. That's just so powerful.
Well, and it didn't, just again, it's like life. Jimmy, it didn't get better overnight. I mean, I didn't really, looking back, I didn't really start seeing the sun. You know, when I get to share with someone who's lost a child, I always tell them, look, it's different for everybody, but I promise you the sun will shine again, and you will start seeing joy. You will laugh. You will, but I didn't feel it till about 18 months. And then I started kind of crawling out of it, but I was committed to that process, to my system of healing. I know it's weird that I say it, but I still, as long as it's been, I still do the same kind of prep system every morning, early in the morning, to get myself set for the day.
That's fire. I almost don't want to move on to the next question and have you on for another hour expanding on that, but we can. I'm going to stick to the script. So that was fire. Thank you for that. If you were to do it all over again, what would you change?
Well, I've been asked that before. Like, if you could change anything, I mean, I always say I would have come to Fairway like 20 years ago. I would have followed Steve Jacobson right out the door when he left Waterfield. Um, I firmly believe that God, when we're born, we have a journey that we're on, and as weird as it sounds, and I've said this, I wouldn't change it, because you're not who you are without all the loss and the tragedy and the wins and and even losing our daughter. People have said, do you wish she was here? And I can tell you, I wished she was here over and over. I woulda, shoulda, coulda for years. And then you finally figure out, look, she's home. She's home. She's in heaven. And I wouldn't wish her to be back here. I can't wait to be with her. And that's where I'm, headed. But I wouldn't change anything, Jimmy. I wouldn't. I don't want to say it's been a completely broken, imperfect, messy, glorious, beautifully mosaic life. And I'm very thankful for the gift of every day. And I think all of those things just, I wake up, I sound really cheesy, but I'm just so thankful to have another day, every day, to be here with you. Like, I'm thankful. I'm thankful I get to share this, and I'm hoping it helps somebody, that maybe it touches one person. Like Jake says, if it helps one person, then it was worth it.
I think this will really will, and that's a perfect segue for my last question. So, Sarah, people know you as here. Insert all the accolades, whatever, that all the trophies that people don't care about a lot of the times. You're just here, mega producer, and you're a coach. You've been through all of these hardships, the divorces, you've lost your child. To somebody that's struggling with that, or maybe they're just starting out with their mortgage career or real estate or whatever it is, what advice would you give to someone looking to get it done?
Wow. Well, you know what? The thing is, every day is a new beginning, right? And every day you have a blank slate. And so, to understand, when you wake up in the morning, you get a do-over. You do. You get a do-over, and you get to, paint that canvas each day. And it can be glorious. It can be beautiful. It can be impactful, or you can waste that day. And what are you going to do with it? How are you going to change your own life, change other people's lives? What's the commitment for each and every day? So, I mean, I think people have to understand that each day is a gift. And what are you going to do with your waking hours to do it right? And I would say that's been something that I've been, I'm not going to say every day. There's days that I just am a slug on a Sunday because I'm tired and I just want to rest, and I want to watch the Great British Bake Off, you know, but but for the most part, each day, how can you change your own life, and how can you change other people's lives around you?
I love that. Sarah, what a great answer. I've taken 2 pages plus a little bit of notes. Like, this is really, this has really been a great privilege to have interviewed you. I want to thank you for taking the time with me. I know that you're very busy, and I want to thank everybody for also listening on. To anybody that's looking to connect with you, Sarah, what would be the best way for them to connect?
Yeah, again, a lot of social media going on, but just to simplify it, just go to Facebook. It's Sarah Middleton, and you can message me, or you can, throw something in there. I'm trying to stick to the word simplicity. In fact, that's one of Brian Klute's charges, is to keep it simple. So, if you reach out to me 20 different ways, I'll probably miss it. So just come to Facebook.
Absolutely, and we'll definitely include a link in the show notes. So that's great. I again want to thank all of our listeners for listening, for sure. This has been the Get It Done podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And if you want to support the show, if you've liked what you've heard, please hit that subscribe button, tell a friend, write us a 5-star review. All these things really help us to get our word out. Once again, I'm Jimi Ryan with the Get It Done podcast. Many more stories on the way. Thanks, Sarah.
Let's do the wave for Jimmy. Amazing. Stick with it. God bless. Thank you.